The US dollar isn't just a currency, it's the most powerful weapon in human history. It's controlling nations not through war, but through dependence. Every empire in history had a weapon. Rome had legions, Britain had ships, America has the dollar. It's not printed on gold, it's not backed by oil. It's backed by something far more powerful: trust. But here's the paradox. If every country is drowning in debt, if America itself owes trillions, why does the world still depend on the US dollar?
Ow.
This is the dollar illusion, the invisible empire that rules the modern world without firing a single bullet. The story begins in 1944 in a small town called Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. The world was exhausted after 2 world wars. Europe was in ruins. The US stood untouched, powerful and rich, holding nearly 2/3 of the world's gold. Global leaders gathered to rebuild the economy. They made a historic deal. The US dollar would become the center of the new global system. Each currency pegged to the dollar, and the dollar itself backed by gold. This meant one thing: the world would trade not in gold, but in dollars. America had built an empire, not by conquest, but by contracts. For nearly 30 years, this system worked. The dollar was as good as gold until the gold ran out. By the late 1960s, America was printing money to fund the Vietnam War and social programs. Other countries noticed the dollar wasn't worth as much as claimed. They began demanding real gold in exchange. Then, on August 15, 1971, President Richard Nixon made a shocking announcement. "I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold." Temporarily, that word became permanent. From that moment, the dollar was no longer backed by gold. It became fiat currency. Money backed only by faith in the US government. The entire global financial system shifted overnight from tangible value to belief. The dollar didn't lose power, it became even stronger. Because now, America could print infinite wealth, and the rest of the world had no choice but to accept it. But the US needed something to keep the dollar dominant, a new anchor to replace gold. In 1974, it found one: oil. The US struck a secret deal with Saudi Arabia, the world's largest oil exporter. In exchange for protection, weapons, and political support, Saudi Arabia agreed to sell oil only in US dollars. Every barrel of oil sold in the world had to be paid for in dollars, whether it was France, India, or Japan. This became the petrodollar system, and it changed everything. Now, every country needed US dollars to buy energy, the lifeblood of their economies. To get those dollars, they had to trade with the US, borrow from American banks, or hold US Treasury bonds. It was genius, and it turned the dollar into the oxygen of global trade. Even countries that hated each other were united by one thing: their dependence on American money. Over time, America built an invisible web, one that wrapped around every economy. Global trade, energy, finance, and debt, all were priced in dollars. The SWIFT network, the IMF, and the World Bank became tools of this system. If you wanted to trade, invest, or borrow, you needed the dollar. And if you went against US interests, that web could choke you. Look at Iran, Venezuela, Russia. When the US imposed sanctions, it didn't send troops, it simply cut them off from the dollar system. Overnight, their economies collapsed. That's the true power of the dollar. It can destroy nations without war. But no empire lasts forever. In the 2020s, something began to change. Countries started looking for ways to escape the dollar's shadow. China launched the digital yuan. Russia began trading oil in rubles and yuan. BRICS nations Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa are discussing a new shared currency to challenge the dollar's dominance. Even Saudi Arabia, once the pillar of the petrodollar system, is now accepting payments in yuan. Meanwhile, central banks across the world are buying record amounts of gold, a silent signal that they no longer trust paper money. The cracks in the dollar system are real. The illusion is fading. But here's the irony. The country that built this system is now trapped inside it. America's national debt has crossed $34 trillion. The U.S. must keep printing money to pay for old debts and maintain global dominance. But every new dollar weakens the old ones. The same system that gave America control, slowly eroding it. Foreign countries are reducing their dollar reserves. Investors are shifting toward gold, real estate, and digital assets. Even the U.S. population is losing faith, as inflation eats away at their savings. The empire of paper is trembling under the weight of its own creation. So what happens next? Is the dollar doomed to fall? Or will it simply evolve? Some believe the next phase is already here: digital money. Central banks are developing CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, programmable money that can track, control, and replace physical cash. It's not the end of the dollar, it's the transformation of control. The empire will no longer be paper, it will be code. And whoever controls that code controls the world's wealth. The U.S. didn't conquer the world with weapons, conquered it with debt, trust, and illusion. The dollar became the heartbeat of global finance, a system so deeply embedded that escaping it feels impossible. But like every empire before it, its greatest strength has become its greatest weakness. When the illusion breaks, the world will finally realize the most powerful empire in history wasn't built on land. It was built on belief. The U.S. dollar never fought a war, and yet it has ruled the world. One currency, one system, countless nations bound to it. But illusions break. Trust fades. And when it does, the foundations of power shift. Understand the dollar illusion so you're not its victim, but its observer. One day, the world may escape this system. The question: will you be ready when it happens?